This is Bill Martinez. We're coming at you live 6 minutes after the top of the hour. Pastor Carl Gallups is with us. He is a senior pastor at Hickory Hammock Baptist Church in Milton, Florida, an Amazon top 60 best-selling author, conservative talk radio host heard nationally and internationally, also a prolific TV, radio, and print media guest commentator, former decorated Florida law enforcement officer, currently sworn special deputy with the Maricopa County, Arizona Sheriff's Office under the appointment of Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Carl, always good to have you on with us, brother. How you doing?
Bill, it's a pleasure to be back with you, man. I always enjoy being with you too. I'm doing great. Thank you so much.
Hey, wonderful. Hey, congratulations on the book, When the Lion Roars. I mean, this was a book that was dynamic from the very start. You had rewrite after rewrite because the world kept changing on you as you were writing the book, huh?
Yes, it's amazing. It's amazing, and it just it comes from Amos chapter 8 verse chapter 3 verse 8, where it says listen, when the lion roars, who will not fear? When the sovereign Lord has spoken, who will not prophesy? And in other words, the premise of the book is I'm just saying, look, folks, look around you. The lion is roaring.
Exactly.
I mean, we're living in the most profoundly prophetic times since the first coming of Jesus Christ. And the book lays it out in detail from the time of Israel's rebirth on the world scene in the Middle East. It's the center of the daily news cycle and has been since it's been there. And everything else that has unfolded since then, dozens of biblical prophecies written 2,000 years ago have come to pass and or are unfolding right before our eyes. And we're the first generation, the only generation in the history of mankind to see it happen. And so I just catalog it.
Yeah, this is amazing. I mean, two things that we need to consider about prophecy. It's not as wiggy and as out there as some people would think that have not been around it. Number one is it is consistent, and God says He will not do anything without letting you know.
That's right.
So God is prophetic. There is no other God that I think anybody could worship that says their God predicted it to be so, right?
No, you're absolutely right. There's nothing like what you will experience in this book that I've written that measures the scriptures against what's actually happening. There's nothing in any other religious writing of the world that even comes close.
Exactly.
Nothing in the Quran that comes close to that. Nothing in the Buddhist teachings or the Hindu Vedas or on and on and on. You're absolutely right. And, when you said that God doesn't do anything without letting His people know, that also comes from Amos chapter 3.
Exactly.
And this book doesn't set any eschatological schemes. It doesn't pull out.
Yeah, you don't have to be pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib.
No. And it's not. It's cross-denominational. It's just. I mean, you don't even have to be a believer in the Word of God to enjoy this book, because what it does is it just takes you to. You can consider it ancient prophecies if you want, from some kind of ancient prophecy book, or if you want, however you want to approach it. But I go to the scriptures and I say, look, here's what it clearly says. Here's the context. Here it is. Boom. Here's the mainstream media talking about it. Here are the military sites. Here are the scientific journals declaring this very thing.
Right.
And we're the first generation to see it happen in 2,000 years. And here it is. And I do that for about 24 different things.
Well, I mentioned, number one, that God tells His people. Number two is whenever things happen of an import to nations, wise men come together and they start connecting the dots, as if Carl, as if we're blindfolded and we're feeling different parts of the elephant and kind of yelling over the body of the pachyderm. Hey, this is what I'm feeling. What do you think? This is what it looks like. Yeah, I can kind of connect that here. And these are wise men coming together, connecting the dots of our world reality. So that's the second thing. I might add a third thing to prophecy, and that is that as each layer, when we go into a prophetic time and a layer needs to be pulled back, I mean, Carl, how many prophetic words in God's Bible have you read over the years and it not be clear to you? But today you read it and you go, I've read this passage how many times? Yeah. And now it has so much more depth and meaning because you start seeing the reality of what God said was going to happen.
Yeah, no, that's brilliantly stated, Bill, and there are various ways to examine that truth that you just declared. One of the ways I examine in my book, one of the ways, is through the technological advancements. Think about it.
Yes.
There are technologies mentioned in the Scriptures, only in the Bible, by the way, as we've already said,
right.
that speak of those markers of the days before the return of the Lord. And by the way, I don't set any dates. I'm not a hand-wringer. I don't even say that, the Lord's coming this year or next year or in our lifetime. I'm just saying we are in the most prophetic time since the first coming of Jesus Christ. And you go back and look at the Scriptures, and the Bible speaks of certain things that will happen in those days before the Lord returns. And, brother, the technology that's required when those things were given, and I'll give you some examples, would have sounded like science fiction when they were written.
Exactly.
And would have continued to sound like science fiction, get this, until about 10 years ago.
Right. And the thing is, you have to appreciate that this is written, the Bible I'm speaking of, and these passages that you're referring to, over 2,000 years ago, right? Yeah. And so how could they imagine nuclear weapons? How could they imagine flying aircraft? How can that be translated beyond their comprehension at that time, 2,000 years ago, to talk what's going to happen 2,000 years forward?
Yes.
How do you describe that?
Yeah, because they claim to have been taken into the presence of God and shown the days, the last days. And if that's so, that means they were taken at least to our lifetime and beyond. And how do you explain that? How do you explain those things you just said? How do you explain how everybody will receive a mark? How do you explain that everybody on the face of the earth will be numbered and marked? How do you explain that everybody will see something happen at one time? How do you explain that an image will be caused to live and breathe and speak? How do you you could just go right down to all of these things that were spoken in the Word. And now we look at those and we say, oh, well, that's already happening.
Right, exactly. This is the pushback. Yeah, and this is the pushback, Carl, I'm sorry, on the whole globalist mindset. Because if we think globally, then it opens the door more to this one world type of government and thinking that allows you to become a number. Yeah.
No, in fact, I address in my book, I have a chapter on United Nations Agenda, UN Agenda 2030, and I document that from the UN Agenda's own documents, and you can read it right there in my book with your own eyes. This is not conspiracy theory stuff. They write it by the year 2030. It is the United Nations Agenda, the globalist agenda. They literally say we will have every man, woman, boy, and girl, every child marked, identified, numbered, entered into a database. And this will be done to bring peace and security to the earth. I mean, people that know the Word of God know that all of those are prophetic declarations coming right out of the UN, and they've already aligned biotech companies to make it happen, and the biotech companies are bragging about it on their website, and it's all documented in the book.
Carl, we'll leave it there. We got to go to break. Carl Gallups is with us. More from Carl on the Martinez. Our conversation with Carl Gallups continues. As Carl stated earlier regarding his book, When the Lion Roars, understanding the implications of ancient prophecies for our time. I know some people think, well, that was then, what about now? And the reason that you can look back is it validates what's happening in the now, because it is consistent throughout the Word of God. God doesn't change. I mean, He doesn't have to change. And He clearly says He doesn't. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So there is a pattern that you can follow, and you can say, well, yeah, there's God again. And from Amos 3, chapter 3, he says, when a trumpet sounds in a city, do not the people tremble? Well, they tremble because they don't know. And you imagine, the less you know, Carl, the more you're going to tremble, right? So, but when disaster comes to a city, has not the Lord caused it? See, and this is what the children of Israel understood at points in their experience with God, is that God is in charge. He is sovereign. Things happen because it's by His hand. It's like 9/11, which Jonathan Cahn, who you know very well as well, when he talked about in The Harbinger, when he followed the pattern of what happened in 9/11, definitely consistent with what happened with the children of Israel. You can go to the book of Isaiah, and you see, interestingly and ironically, the consistent pattern of what happened in the United States, a couple thousand years earlier. Well, actually more than that, about 2,500 years earlier. And here it is repeating itself almost word for word. Pretty uncanny, isn't it?
It really, really is. is. And again, you've nailed it in your analysis. And I would just add to what you said that, this particular book that I've written, I mean, people that have read it, I mean, Joseph Farrell wrote the foreword to it, the president of the company.
Yes,
and the president.
Very well written. I love his stuff. Gosh, he's so good.
Yeah,
he's
thanks.
So good.
I appreciate it. Yeah. But he did, he wrote the foreword to it, and I was just absolutely, honored because he read the book, and he said, oh my gosh, this is unlike any prophecy book that's out there, anything on prophecy in the market. And the reason is because this book does deal with the here and now very, very powerfully, very profoundly. I mean, and it takes those things that the Word of God said, look, here will be the definitive markers of the days before the return of the Lord. And so what I do is I take those passages and go straight to the mainstream, not conspiracy websites, not just some fundamentalist biblical site, but I go to mainstream media, military sites, history sites, scientific sites, technology sites, and I show their headlines. I show their commentary on what they are doing and what they are inventing and where they are planning to take the world. And it matches up exactly with what the Word of God said 2,000 years ago would be the markers. As a matter of fact, you mentioned in my introduction, I mean, I tried to write it a little bit comically, but it was frustrating because when I was writing the book, I was facing a publisher's deadline earlier this year, but the world kept changing so rapidly. I mean, huge geopolitical significant changes, particularly in the Middle East. I mean, Russia shows up in the Middle East while I'm writing the book. Then China shows up, and then Russia and Iran, the whole Iran nuclear accords, and then Turkey unleashes on Russia, and NATO starts, crumbling, and ISIS is going crazy, and then add China to the mix.
I mean, where did that come from, right?
Yeah, and China shows up, and China starts giving troops to Russia, 5,000 troops, and then Russia and Iran start using, each other's military bases, and they enter into military accord. Then Turkey begins to make nice with Russia. I mean, it's absolutely astounding. And in fact, I even said in there that more than likely that Vladimir Putin would be talking World War III stuff. And then I turned my manuscript in. The book is printed, and what's the headlines of the news just last week?
Yeah,
World War III stuff.
Right.
Is talking with Turkey and with the people of Syria. I mean, it's unbelievable. But that's just one example of how fresh this book is. It is the here and now based upon what God said would happen. And like you said, there's only one book in the world that does that.
Exactly.
And Bill, you said there's a pattern. Look, I tell people, the only book in the world that says these things, but think about it. That same book, for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, for centuries, said, the Christ is coming, the Messiah is coming. He will offer himself on a cross. They will pierce his hands and his feet. He will rise after 3 days. He will open the eyes of the blind. He will be born in Bethlehem, and on and on and on, these prophecies. And boom, it all came down to a point in 33 AD, and there it was. It happened. Boom. And then the scriptures spoke of, and then in the very last days, God says, I'll bring back my nation of Israel. I'll bring them from all the nations from which they've scattered. I'll put them back in the land. It'll be powerful. And on and on and on. And boom, there it is, 1948. So why should we not trust? I mean, those two monumental things, the first coming of Christ changed the calendars of the world.
Exactly.
We speak of the year 2016. All that means is it's been 2016 years since Jesus went to Calvary's cross. I mean, and rose from the grave. Israel in the land. I mean, that is the driving geopolitical force of the Middle East and thus world affairs. That's what ISIS is all about. That's what Iran's nuclear program is all about. That's what brought Russia to the Middle East, fundamentally.
And it's also the advancement of our technology. We just had Robert McGinnis on, the retired colonel. And his new book, Future War, Super Soldiers, Terminators, Cyberspace, and the National Security Strategy for the 21st Century Combat. I mean, they're talking about robotics. I mean, RoboCop is around the corner here, Carl. So all this is coming together. I don't know if I told you this, but about 8 years ago, I had a prophetic conference in Southern California with Dr. Chuck Missler and Bill Salas and Bill Koenig as well, and some others. And it was the title of it was Sync Up. The idea is that we needed to sync our spiritual clocks, our body clocks, to what God was doing. And here we are reminded, because what God has shown me, when Israel came back and became a nation again, as he said would happen in 1948, I said, it's as if the hour hand of God's prophetic clock was set at that moment.
Yep.
And what has been passing since have been, hours, minutes, and seconds to this, this eternal climax that we've been waiting for.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think you're dead on, and I speak of that in the book as well. I speak of all the technology you just spoke of the robotics and transhumanism and CRISPR-Cas9. I mean, all of that's there. And it's all, again, most of this stuff, if we had been talking about this 10 years ago, we would have been considered complete conspiracy theorists.
Well, I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to read this book, and you're going to, am I reading the newspaper or what? No, this is an explanation. As Karl Barth said many years ago, that he felt he should go to the pulpit with the Bible in one hand, the newspaper in the other, and now more than ever, you can see the contemporary events aligning up with what God said would happen. Karl, one final deal before we wrap up here. We've got about a minute and a half left. Okay. And that is, all this being said, we know that evangelicals, only about 50% will actually go out and vote. And this is evangelicals and Catholics. We can put the two together, especially Catholics have been in the headlines lately because of things that have been said about them from Hillary's side. But evangelicals, only about 50% will bother to register to vote, and then even half of them will actually go out and vote. And now more than ever, the call is out for evangelicals, Catholics, to make sure they're registered to vote and to make sure you vote. And there is a clear distinction between these two candidates. And I will say, I don't know how you argue against Donald Trump just based on the two-party platforms.
Yeah, well, no, you're absolutely right. Based on the two-party platforms, and let me say, Bill Clinton won the election by saying, it's the economy stupid, it's the economy stupid. Let me say to your listeners, it's the judges, it's the Supreme Court judges. It's globalism versus nationalism.
Yeah, it is. This is a choice election, ladies and gentlemen. It's that simple. Do not be distracted by what the mainstream media and what the staunch Democrats. They're in a clear panic. That is real obvious, isn't it, Karl?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I think they see a destruction of what they've worked so hard towards this globalism.
No question, Karl. We're out of time. Thanks again. Your book is linked on our website, available at all the usual places. Win the Lion Roars. Karl Gallups on Bill Martinez.
This report is brought to you by